Welcome to Russell Jones Speaks, where we explore big issues that matter to parents, grandparents, and kids. We tackle intergenerational issues. Everything that affects parents, grands, and children is on the table. That includes health and fitness, relationships, attitude, family unity, vision, adversity, God, and anything else that might arise. The goal is for you to take away something that you can use in your life immediately. Dr. Rob Gilbert is a leading expert on peak performance. As a professor at Montclair State University in New Jersey for the last 34 years, he has researched the mental secrets of the world's greatest athletes, winningest coaches, highest earning salespeople, and top students. He has spoken to such groups as the United States Military Academy, Johnson & Johnson, Brown University, and Madison Square Garden, and given hundreds of radio and TV interviews. He's also the former editor of Bits and Pieces magazine, and he has authored a number of books, including Read This Book Tonight to Help You Win Tomorrow. Get mentally primed to perform your best. However, much of his fame surrounds his daily success hotline, which he has made available to anyone who can dial a phone number. Today is message number 12,063. Do the math. That is over 33 years, and he has never missed a day. Affectionately known as Doc to all who have taken his class, I welcome him today. Hey, Doc.
I don't know why anybody would want to listen to this when you interviewed Helene Neville. You know, I mean,
No. There's some really good stuff that I know is going to come
I
out
can't
of
wait to
today.
listen to your podcast with her. That sounds unbelievable.
Yes, it is. And
I mean, okay, I've done a message every day for 33 years. She runs 2 marathons in a day. How many days in a row did she run a marathon?
93 days.
Yeah. So I've done a
Across
3-minute
this.
message for 33 years. I mean, they don't add up.
Yeah, but the number of lives you have touched is up there as well as the one she's touched. So,
Yeah.
and nobody's story is finished yet. So we'll
That's
see.
right. Well, you can never tell. I might do 2 marathons in a day.
Maybe 2 marathon interviews. But
And you left out the fact that I was one of your college professors.
I was getting to that. That was going to be the surprise. But
Oh, okay.
anyway,
Okay.
before we get into all the amazing things you've uncovered over the years and that can instantly change one's life for the better, I want to get some history. So, Doc, everybody can hear your accent, especially after you go back up north to visit family. So tell us about growing up in Massachusetts. Give us some family, neighborhood, school, that sort of
Oh.
stuff.
Well, I went to this school, Boston Latin School, the oldest school in the country. It was started in 1635. And people always say, oh, no, Harvard's the oldest school. Well, Harvard started in 1636 to take care of the graduates of Boston Latin. So I did. I was incredibly successful at Boston Latin School. They told me to leave the school. Imagine that. Imagine a public school, and they called my parents and they said, this school's a little. But I didn't leave, and I graduated number 300 out of 322. And then I went to the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. I failed 10 courses. I flunked out. Now, here's the amazing thing. The school I flunked out of is the school I got a PhD from. The school I flunked out of was the school I got a PhD from. And about 10 years ago, I was nominated as the outstanding alumnus. I guess I forgot I flunked out. Now, I am not telling you these things to discredit myself. You're saying, why do I want to listen to this loser? I'm telling you these things because, I knew that I wasn't dumb or stupid. A lot of people told me I was. I just knew I was lazy. And I would say that everybody, the only problem is laziness. I tell my students every single day, college success has nothing to do with intelligence and everything to do with diligence. Everything to do with diligence. So Helene, I can't wait to delve into Helene Neville. She has a diligent mindset. She's going to do it until, she is just not going to quit. And how many students do you think I have like that? Not too many, not too many. So I guarantee that if you listen to Russell and I, as long as we're on, I guarantee that you're going to get at least one big idea that could change your life. But I could also guarantee that if you don't put this idea into action within the next 24 or 48 hours, you never will. You say, oh, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make that phone call. I'm going to listen to Helene's podcast. if you don't do it in 24 to 48 hours, you probably never, ever will. That's just how the mind works. So Russell and I are in the business of changing lives. I mean, that's the whole thing. So let's see, what else was I unsuccessful at?
Whoa, I want to hear about your sports career.
Well, I tried out for the Olympic team in wrestling, and I was the first person in the whole country cut from the team. So, but I tried out for it. I wasn't. The thing is, I wasn't that successful in anything. But like wrestling, I wasn't good at wrestling, but I loved wrestling. I was a really, really good coach at wrestling, much better than a wrestler. So my boyhood hero was Ted Williams. And Ted
Uh,
Williams arguably is the greatest hitter of all time. And Ted Williams once said, he said, all I wanted out of life is I wanted to walk down the street and said people would say, there goes the greatest hitter who ever lived. And I just wanted to be the greatest teacher and the greatest speaker who ever lived. I mean, I'm not, but that's a pretty good goal. And so all my energies is, why am I so fascinated with Helene? So I could steal her story and tell it to my hotline callers, to inspire them. So that's what I've gone through my whole life, just studying successful people and figuring out what their strategies were. And why can't we? So let me tell you my whole framework. So I don't have PowerPoint, but you tell me if you agree with this, Russell. I think people fall into one of four categories. And the four categories are, is that readable? So
yes,
there are three
3%.
percenters, 27 percenters, 60 percenters, and 10 percenters. So you look at it like this, like 3% of the population, they're the explorers. Those are the people that go to the North Pole. Those are the first people that went up Everest. Then 27% of the people are the pioneers. After the explorers went out there and discovered it, then the pioneers, who were very courageous because it was still really, really dangerous, they go out. And then after the explorers discovered it, and after the pioneers made it safe, then 60% of the settlers, they go in when it's really safe. There are no lions and tigers and bears. And 10% of the people are the people who never leave home. You know, so another way of interpreting it, 3% of the people will do whatever it takes. Like Helene, she'll do whatever it takes. 20% of the people are really good people. They'll do more than expected. Like I always tell the story about one of my former students at Montclair State, Melissa Sapio. She's the only student I know that graduated from Montclair State with a perfect 4.0 average. She took 44 courses and she got 44 A's. She never got an A minus. So she still speaks in my classes. And when she speaks in my classes, after I give her an introduction, a nice introduction about 44 A's, 44 classes, all that, she starts by talking to me and she said, look, I know you think I'm smarter than you. I am no smarter than you. I might work harder. I might care more, but I'm no smarter. And I'll tell you exactly how I did what I did. No matter what my professor asked me to do, I did more than expected. So if the math professor said do problems 1, 3, and 5, Melissa would do 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. If the history professor said the assignment for next time is to do chapters 1 and 2, Melissa would read 1, 2, and maybe part of 3. She didn't do a whole lot more than expected. So 3% of the whatever it takes people, 27% are the more than expected people, 60% are there. Okay, if class starts at 10:45, I'll be there at 10:44. If class ends at 12:15, I'm out of there immediately. They won't do any more than expected. If the boss wants them to come in on Saturday, there's no way they're going to come in on Saturday. And 10% of the people will never leave home. Probably the student I had at Montclair State that I thought had the most potential was a kid on the basketball team, and he was a stand-up comedian, but just off the top. I mean, he could. I used to start class by I said, okay, just riff for 5 or 10 minutes, and he would get up and he'd talk about anything. So I said, look, you got to start going to comedy classes on Monday night, and a lot of comedy clubs on Monday night, they have comedy classes for upcoming comedians. He said, no, I can't afford it. I said, I'll pay for it. I'll pay for it. And then he said, I don't go to New York City. I said, what do you mean you don't go to New York City? You live in Jersey City. How could you not? He said, I just have never gone to New. So, I mean, he could have, he would have, he should have, but he didn't. Oh, let me tell you another story. Do you know Big Mike Spence?
I don't think so.
Oh, you have to have him on. You have to have him on.
Mike Spence.
He might be the best motivational speaker in the country. So anyway, poor kid, single mom, in the 10th grade. He's 6'6". He's a basketball player, and they get him into St. Anthony's with Bobby Hurley. So, if you go to St. Anthony's in Jersey City, and Bobby Hurley, who's retired now, is probably the best high school basketball coach ever in America. So, even the 12th guy on his team, Hurley's high school team, would get a D1 scholarship. So, Mike has this unbelievable opportunity to play for the great Bobby Hurley, or the great Bob Hurley. And I think the second week of school, after they read them the riot act, saying, you're one and done. You screw up here, you're out of here. We don't give second chances. For some reason, he and his friends are in the chemistry lab. Now, do you remember chemistry lab? There used to be something hung down from the ceiling. It was like a round thing, and if you pulled it, the water would come down in
Oh
case there
yeah,
was a
yeah,
fire.
yeah.
Yeah. So for some reason, Mike thought it would be funny because one of his friends was bending over to pull it. Now, what he didn't expect is it got stuck. So there was a flood. He gets thrown out of the school immediately. His mother goes to Coach Hurley and begs. And he said, no way, one and done. So
Wow.
now Mike went on to being successful and all that. But I mean, at that time, imagine
Yeah.
screwing up that way. So, so the what Russell and I want to do today is whether you're 10% or a 60% or a 27%, we want you to get into the 3%. That's it. Whether you're in sales or whether you're in school or whether you're in sports. See, that's what's fun. The fun thing is not that we're giving a talk. The fun thing is our goal is to make a difference in your life. And that's what this is all about.
Always. Always. Yep. I agree. So, all right. So somehow you end up in New Jersey, and my
Well,
sister
not
Carol.
somehow. No, not somehow. Well, let me tell you. See, I'm the beginning of the baby boom generation. I was born in 47.
Uh-huh.
So the baby boom generation is sort of like, you ever see these pictures of snakes? And, you have the snake, and the snake looks something like this, you know.
Right.
Um, is that, I think I need a better pen. Hold on for a second.
All right. During this brief intermission, Dr. Gilbert is locating a pen, a better pen.
Okay. So the snake looks something like this. Is that better? And then the snake eats a bunny rabbit, and with like a python or something, you could see the bunny rabbit being digested. So my class, 1947, we were like the bulge. All of a sudden, there was this huge increase in kids going to college. This huge increase in kids. It's because the fathers just got back from the war. So anyway, my school, Boston Latin, which had a great reputation, basically anybody from Boston Latin that graduated got into UMass for years. Not my year, because there was this huge, huge influx of applications. So, every this school is totally college oriented. Every week, teachers would say, "What schools do you get into? What schools?" And we used to send more kids to Harvard than any other school in the country. So anyway, it became very obvious the kids weren't getting into Harvard and UMass the way they used to from Boston Latin. So I'm filling out my application late, of course. And then I say, look, the kids who are in the top 100 aren't getting in. What chance do I have? So what I did, and I got into school at UMass. And you know what I did? So it's an inner city school. It's right in downtown Boston. I applied to the School of Agriculture. Everybody applied to the School of Engineering, Liberal Arts, Business. Nobody applied or education. Nobody. And I got in because I did something different. I applied to the School of Agriculture. Then when I went to orientation, what did I do? I switched to liberal arts. I became a psych major, you know? So what I'm
Nice.
saying is there's always a way. I'm reading
Right.
a book, I'm doing research on a guy named Titanic Thompson. And I'd like our listeners, I mean, just get on, watch some videos. This guy was the world's or United States' greatest gambler, but he always had a sure thing. He never gambled unless he knew the outcome. So
Yeah.
when he said, I'm going to hit a golf ball 500 yards, he knew he could get a golf ball 500 yards, even though Tiger Woods never hit a golf ball 500 yards. And he did hit the golf ball 500 yards, and he made a whole lot of money. So read about Titanic Thompson. So I go to UMass, and I was very, very unsuccessful at UMass. And then I just meet one person. One day I flunk out of school, and they say, look, you have 3 semesters left to get your grades up just so you could graduate. Back then, you needed a 1.8 to graduate. So I took every easy course I could. I was a psych major. So I took my psych requirements, and I took Introduction to Health, Introduction to Recreation, Hotel and Restaurant Management, Music Appreciation, Art Appreciation, and I took Introduction to Physical Education. And one day the professor talked about sports psychology. He never talked about it before. He never talked about it since. And for the only time in my whole college career, my mind went on fire. I said, this is what I want to learn. This is what I really, really, really want to learn. So I tell my students this story, and I said, what would I be doing now if I cut class that day? The only day he talked about sports psychology.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, there's a quote I really like. It only takes one key to unlock the kingdom. And, sometimes one thing, one person, one book, one seminar, one podcast, that's the exciting thing. But you never know what's going to happen. You never, like when, when your story and my story began, your story and my story began in about 1977 when I read a little article in Sports Illustrated about the mighty Atom. There was a little article about the mighty Atom. And then I come to New York City, and there was a big book festival, and Viking Books had a book they were just coming out about the mighty Atom. And then from that, Dennis, you, and all that. So it all started before I even knew you. So it's really fun that you just never, ever, ever know. So
Connections.
I just hope, hope is an interesting word, HOPE, hold on, possibilities exist. And whatever your hopes and dreams are, I could guarantee that if you follow some of our advice, you can make them come true. Not because you're so great, because the competition isn't. Most people are really not going for it. Most people go to school, but they're not students. Most people play a sport, but they're not athletes. Most people practice an instrument, but they're not musicians. Kurt Vonnegut, the great novelist, once said, hundreds of thousands of people have the talent to become big time writers, but very few of them are willing to live the life of a writer. So they have the talent, but are you willing to live the life of a Dan Gable? And
Oh
no.
yeah. It's good.
So how are we doing? Is this
Good
podcast
stuff.
going okay? Is this podcast going okay?
Yeah, it's good. I just I was just going back to like taking your course before I'm guessing that was the summer of 1979, if I recall correctly. My sister had talked about you. She had taken a course with you, I believe, before that, or maybe a couple. But and I just remember your grading philosophy.
Well, before that, let's talk about your sister for a second, because your sister,
My
your
sister.
sister was interested in going to graduate school in exercise science, and I told her about the program. And the exercise science program at UMass was the first one, I think, in the world, and one of the best ones in the world. And I just graduated, and they knew me, so I was credible. I just made one phone call and got into that program. Of course, she had to apply, but when they said, "Well, if you if you certify her, we'll take her," and she did really, really great. And I tell my
That
students,
was a big deal going, just traveling that distance. I mean,
yeah,
today, literally the world has gotten so much smaller, but from a girl from Secaucus, New Jersey, going up to Massachusetts and, you know, back it was only payphones back then, for
That's right.
communication.
That's right. That's right.
So yeah, that was a big deal. But yeah, she's had a great career. I mean, I think she just retired, but she's had a great career in exercise physiology.
But this goes back to only takes one key to unlock the kingdom. I tell my students, what do you want? I want to get an MBA from the University of Michigan. Have you spoken to any of your professors? Your professor might have gone to graduate school with a guy that runs the MBA program at the University of Michigan. You just never know. This is what this is. I'm not saying this is a huge mountain to climb. This is what makes it fun. You just never know who knows who.
Yeah, connecting. Well, that was yeah. So before we jump ahead, though, I just wanted to get that grading philosophy.
Yeah.
I was reminded of it in the book you co-wrote. Uh, Thank God You're Lazy, and you recounted about that story about how you challenge your students, and it always affected me thinking about it in that your goal was that the student would learn, that they would gain knowledge, and you'd give them every opportunity to do that. And I understand, the practicality of, teachers having to have a deadline and everything else because you're moving on. But that was just tell us briefly about how that came about and that some of the results of that.
Hmm. Well, um, everything about me since 1979 has changed as a teacher, except one thing. I still give my exams the exact same way when you were one of my students. So when I was in graduate school at UMass, you had to have what's called a cognate area, like a minor in graduate school. And mine was physiological psychology. It's basically neurology, the nervous system, which is probably the most complex thing in the universe. So I had a Dr. Carlson, and Dr. Carlson, about a week or two before the exam, had give us all the questions. And, all the questions, it was define, describe, and give the significance of it. The mitochondria, define it, describe the mitochondria, and what's the significance of mitochondria. So the night before the test, I knew what I was getting on the test.
Hmm.
I knew, and that motivated me. Because if there were 100 questions and I knew 60, okay, I have 40 left. So I've always been giving my exams that way. And so I give but I go above Dr. Carlson. I give my students the questions, I give them the answers. The day after they take the test, I give them the grades, and I give them a chance to retake it as many times as they want. So I don't call my final exams. I call them laziness demonstrations. Prove to me how lazy you are. If I'm going to give you the questions, give you the answers, give you your grade, and give you a chance to take the test as many times as you want, there's only one reason you won't get less than an A, and that's if you're lazy. So over the years, I said, okay, this exam is either a laziness demonstration or a mastery demonstration. Are you going to do more than expected? Are you going to do whatever it takes? Or are you going to be lazy? It's up to you. And of course, on the same exam, like since COVID, I've been giving take home exams. On the same exam, some person could write 6 pages and another person could write 56 pages, the exact same exam. So they're just telling me how much they want it.
Right. So okay,
So
and what? But in the one book you reference, I mean, there's a lot of kids that never go for the A, even with the
Oh
opportunity
yeah,
to
I love
redo.
kids. I love kids. I'll email. And I said, you got to be on the exam. Do you want to retake it? No, I'm fine. You got to see. No, I'm graduated. I'm fine. You know, and if they're fine,
Amazing.
I'm fine.
All right. All
But
right. So, um, success hotline. Just I know everybody talks about it. I know it's been written about. It's been listened to. Just give everybody because I know some of my listeners have not heard of it. Just give us a little bit about that, the beginning of it, and is it? I'm sure that you've set records and stuff already by doing it, but just talk about that. I know it's followed. I know you've gone from making a phone call, now people could listen to it on a podcast. But
yeah,
just give me some success hotline history.
let's talk about some of the regrets you have in your life. And one of the big regrets you have is you should have been a wrestler, not a basketball player. You know that. Look at your arms, look at your shoulders. You were born to be a wrestler, and you know that's like That's like Michael Jordan goes out for the hockey team. What are you thinking, Michael? So
Uh,
anyway, the thing that Russell and I have in common is his son was a really, really good wrestler, and I was a former wrestler and a wrestling coach. And, I was a maniac wrestling coach. I mean, I had my own wrestling mats where I lived. I mean, we worked out all year round. And then I come to Montclair State, and my graduate classes, I see them once a week, like Monday from 6:30 to 9. And I say, wait a second, we used to work out twice on Sundays, and now I see these people once a week. So I have this idea, how could I be with my students every day, even though I see them once a week? And I said, and this is before all the cell phone stuff, as you said. So I said, okay, I'm going to get one of these old fashioned recorder, voice recording, answering machines, remember, with the cassette tapes?
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. For people don't know, this is what a cassette tape looks like. See that? Cassette tapes. I'm the
It's a
only
history
person in the world
lesson.
that's
It's a
the
little
only
history
person who
lesson
still
here, folks.
uses it. And we'll give you the whole thing. This is called a cassette tape recorder. Okay, you see that?
Oh yes, sir.
So um, I start putting 3 minutes. Huh?
Keep going.
Anyway, I said, okay, what I'm going to do for my students is every day for the next 14 weeks, the semester is usually 14 weeks, I'm going to leave a 3-minute recording and they have to call every day I would just do it for 98 days. So the 98 principles or the 98 secrets of sports psychology. So I did it. And by the time the 14 weeks was up, I had people from all over calling all the time. I had so many people calling that I never stopped doing it. So that's how it started,
Yeah, but
you know.
I mean, so what is this going to be? So you're just setting the bar totally high for all these young people that are posting every day on social media. Like they're so far behind your dedication and your longevity in this. And but the quality of the material that you put out. Now, I've heard that you never have done the same one twice. Is that true? Because I can't, after
Oh no, that's not
12,000, I
true.
can't exactly
I
say.
mean, well, of course, I'd never won. Well, many, many years ago, I won't mention his name, but there's a very, very famous writer, a business writer, and he hired me because he wanted to start doing his own business hotline. So after a couple of weeks, he's doing pretty well. He said, I can't do this anymore. I said, why not? He said, I have to write like 500 words for every message. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I write out the message. I said, who writes out the message? You don't write out the message. I don't write out the message. I just have a few ideas that I might jot down. So, I mean, I don't write out the message. I've never had the exact same message, but I've told the exact same story many times. So let me tell you the story I've told the most over the years. It's a riddle. There are 3 frogs sitting on a log, and one frog decided to jump off the log. How many frogs are left on the log? But it's not a math problem, it's a riddle. But most people see it as a math problem. So there are 3 frogs sitting on a log. One frog decided to jump off the log. How many frogs are left on the log? So I've told this enough times to know what my students are going to say. They're going to say, oh, that's easy. 3 minus 1 equals 2. I said, yeah, if you look at it mathematically, it's correct, but this is a riddle. This is a motivational riddle. The answer is 3, because just because the frog decided doesn't mean it did it. We decide to go to the gym, then guess what? We never go to the gym. We decide to study, but we never study. And that's why Russell and I said, if you don't put this stuff into use within the next 24 to 48 hours, you probably never will, because your
Right.
decision. I met a very, very famous sports writer, and I don't know if he wants me to retell this story, so I won't say his name. But he was single, and he works for a New York newspaper, and he wants to get married. He wants to find a relationship, and he's been very unsuccessful. But he told me he had a new strategy. He said when he sees an attractive woman, he talks himself out of it. He said, "Oh, she'd never. Oh, I'm too old. I'm too young." So his new strategy is after he sees an attractive woman, he has to approach her within 3 seconds. within 3 seconds, because if he waits longer than 3 seconds, the little voice in his mind will kick in. I know there's a very famous high school football coach, Coach Perry, in Nixa, Missouri, and he wants his kids to get to practice in the summer at 6 in the morning. So he said, you have 18 seconds from when your alarm goes off in the morning. You have 18 seconds to get out of bed, get in the shower, and get dressed. So by the time the alarm goes off, you better be in the shower in 18 seconds. So I like those little strategies.
Sure. Oh yeah. So all right, so we get to know each other a bit over the years, stayed in touch. And then I have this little girl, my daughter, and
Yep.
she had some struggles with school when she was a kid. They wanted to put her in special classes and things like that. And we had to make some adjustments and things. And somewhere along the way, you met her. And then the next thing we know, there's a 12-year-old little girl addressing one of your graduate classes on the topic of success. And it made all the local newspapers and everything else. And it added a level of confidence into that little
Yeah.
girl's
She
life.
was she was great.
Yeah. And but like you're willing to take something like that, a youngster like that, and like use her limited life experience to have your graduate students really like consider, where they're going next when they're working with young people. I mean, what was the strategy there?
Well, the strategy, especially for your daughter who didn't do too poorly, she went to Newark Academy, didn't she?
Well, yeah, she did ultimately. Yeah.
That's one of the top prep schools in the world. So anyway, the my strategy for my students is I want to give them an SEE. SEE stand for a significant emotional event. And I think that's what happened to your daughter. All of a sudden, she's saying, "Well, I'm talking to these people who are old enough to be my uh, teachers and my coaches. Maybe I'm better than I think I am." So when you give people like, let me give you an example. I have a former colleague at Montclair State, and I always knew he was going to be a president of a college, and he isn't, but he's working his way up towards it. And he said to me the other day, he said, there were only two people that ever believed that I would become president. He said, me, meaning me. And he said, and the president of my college when I was in college. He said, I was a big guy on campus. I was on the football team. I was president of the senior class. I was da 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 da. He was everything. And he knew the president. So right before graduation, the president calls him to his office. And of course, the president's sitting behind the desk, and my friend's sitting on the other side of the desk. And after they're cordially talking, the president said, let's switch places. So the president sits in his chair, he sits in the president's chair. He said, how does it feel sitting there? He said, whoa, how much did this chair cost? He said, no, no, I'm not talking about the chair. How does it feel sitting in the president's chair? He said, it feels good. He said, you're going to be sitting in that chair one day.
Awesome.
And so that was all of a sudden he said, oh my God, the president thinks I could become a president. So
Hmm.
usually in education, kids are reminded of what they can't do. When we give them significant emotional experience, we remind them what's a possibility, what can happen. So
Yeah.
that's what's fun about teaching, because every
Right. Right.
once in a while it works out.
Yeah. It's good. And I before we get off my daughter, we just have to retell this story. Um, a couple of years after that, maybe 1 or 2 years after um, she got to address your class, she had taken up basketball when she was in fifth grade, and you had heard about it, and you offered her some shooting challenges. And one day we happened to visit Dr. Gilbert at Montclair State University, and my daughter was with me, and we came in. You were in between classes, and she had been working on this foul shooting thing where she was shooting with her eyes closed. And she always had a basketball with her. She had grown up following the Pete Maravich theory of always having a ball with her everywhere. She slept with, I have pictures of her sleeping with a basketball. But this one day, she didn't have the ball with her. And Dr. Gilbert, of course, comes out and says, "Hey, I have another professor here, and I'd like to challenge you to making 5 shots in a row." And there was going to be a prize for that. And we had to find an old basketball in the gym that was underinflated, and it was a boys' basketball, not a women's ball. And so Dr. Gilbert and the professor are there standing kind of off from the foul line, and they're talking. And my daughter takes a shot and makes it, and takes a second shot. And in between shots, Dr. Gilbert keeps talking louder and louder to the professor and moving closer and closer to my daughter because he didn't want to lose the bet. And the next thing, it comes down to the final shot, and Doc is almost standing like in the middle of the foul line with my daughter, with the professor. My daughter takes the shot, and the ball swirls around the rim and falls in. Tell us about the expression. I wish I had a camera that day, Doc. It was amazing. And you started her on that. I mean, that
Yeah.
was, you. I
Well,
think you had said something that Michael Jordan
well,
shot
she
a
was a
foul shot with his
superstar.
eyes closed, and so that was just a great experience. Always encouraging everybody around you, Doc. I appreciate that. So next thing I go
Well,
to,
that's another example of that's another example. Only take one key to unlock the kingdom. I mean, that one experience might have had you know, a really, really good effect on her.
yeah, for sure. The and then I came to you not too many years later, wanting to be into public speaking. I had had a big experience in the strongman world, very minimal, and I had followed your advice that you give everybody. I remember back in the day that if you wanted to learn something, go to the people that have done it. I remember making a phone call to arguably the strongest man that ever lived, Paul Anderson, and finally getting through to talk to him. Actually, I have that conversation on a cassette tape, like you were holding up before, and so I came to you to put my talk together. Like I was, where does this go? How do I structure it and everything else? And you said you would take me on as a client, and you gave me a dollar amount. I forget how many. It was in the hundreds. I know that. And I wrote a check out, and you put the check up on your refrigerator. And you said, well, it was back and forth. You said, when you earn enough money, from your speaking engagements, I'll cash the check, right? And
Yeah,
I remember after going through that whole process, getting the talk together, starting out speaking at summer camps, and then schools, and then adults, and then businesses, and everything else over the years. And then I remember happened to visit you, and the check was still on your refrigerator. You never cashed it. How did that was a tremendous strategy.
yeah, yeah. Well, it worked,
It
and
worked.
you're a tremendous speaker.
It was great, but just ideas, that came out. And then you also introduced me to, and I don't even know how you knew about it. I know you were talking about the Mighty Atom before, but you greatly encouraged me to go. There was an event being held at the old Downtown Athletic Club in New York City, the home of the Heisman Trophy. And in circles that I had never traveled in, and you said, oh, get a ticket and go to this. And I went by myself, I think. Maybe no, I think I had Lynn with me. And we went to this event, a bunch of these old timers. Most of them I didn't know, but it was the Association of Old Time Barbell and Strongmen. And it opened up a whole different world uh, of physical culture, but it was also the mental mindset of those people. And that was when I met my mentor, Dennis Rogers. Actually, Dennis is behind me back there, um, obviously we had Dennis come over and visit with you at Montclair State, and then subsequently, you came up to the house up to our house up in Morris County, and Dennis was there. What's like? Give me how do you see Dennis Rogers in just to, going from what he came out of to where he, what he
Yeah.
accomplished, the things he did.
Well, um, going back to Helene and going back to the old times barbell and strongman, the thing they have in common is the 3% whatever it takes, because we met guys like Slim, and when they were doing a strength feat, they would rather break a bone than quit doing. They would just go through it. I mean, if Helene broke a leg, she'd probably still finish the marathon. And
Right.
it's a mindset that you don't find too much. Like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. So Dennis, way back when it was Regis and Kathy Lee, and I'm sure you're and I the only. So Dennis used to be on Regis and Kathy Lee every once in a while, and we
Right.
worked it out that he'd come to my night class the day before he was on. And Dennis is the greatest strongman he ever lived. And if you look at the picture right over Russell's right shoulder, Dennis is not. Some of these strongmen, like how big was Paul Anderson,
Oh yeah, 360 pounds, 5'9", 360.
and how big is Dennis Rogers?
In his prime, Dennis was 5'10". I would guess around between 150 and 160.
Just listen. You've done a podcast with Dennis, or
Not
you
yet.
will?
He's on the list. He
Yeah.
doesn't
Well,
do podcasts, but he said he'll do one with me.
good. Well, just the strongest man. He out Samson. So he used to come to my classes when I could afford him, and he'd do what everybody else would do. He'd rip. Well, he wouldn't just rip a deck of cards. He'd take a deck of cards, still in the box, still with a cellophane, duct tape it one way, duct tape it the other. They take these oven gloves and rip it. I mean, just unbelievable. But the thing I liked about Dennis is, he's the real deal. There are ways to fake these strongman things, not Dennis. So you didn't know the hot water bottle. You didn't know if you were going to get an easy one or a tough one. You didn't know the wrench would. You just didn't know. Every once in a while, Dennis would get some resistance. The steel wouldn't budge, the hot water bottle wouldn't burst. And that's why I brought Dennis to my class, because all of a sudden you could see that Dennis got turned on by the difficulty. And I think this is
Hmm.
the greatest lesson I ever learned in my life. And I think it's the ultimate psychological skill to be turned on by difficulty. Most people would say, well, the same thing with you at the old time barbell and strongman. I don't know what you had. You had some pneumonia. What did you have? I mean, you could barely breathe, and you're
Sinus
in front of this.
infection. Yeah.
Yeah, you're in front of the strongest men in the country or the world, and you have to blow up a hot water bottle, and you did
Yeah.
it.
That was.
And
Mm,
so basically, we're all going to have problems. Are you going to
right.
get turned on or turned off? Are you going to get frustrated or fascinated? The story about Dennis and the story about Russell. I mean, okay, you're the 16th seed in wrestling and you're going against the number one seed. Get turned on by it. I can guarantee if you have a kid that's turned on by difficult math problems, he's going to win the Nobel Prize in math.
Mm,
Because everybody, the teacher gives an assignment and you go, oh no. Well, what about the kid that, okay, I
right.
want to, so we're talking about Helene Neville and everybody's saying this woman's out of her mind, but somebody out there saying, I want to do that. And,
Right.
basically everything starts with just that simple sentence. I want that. When there's something that stirs inside you that says, I want that. I want, like you said, you saw Dennis and you said, I want that. But there's only
Yeah.
one step higher than I want that. I really want that. I
Right.
really want that. And I came up with the word really is my college wrestling coach. He had this little poster on the wall and it said, if you really want to be a champion, then the work is no problem. And the only word that was italicized was the word really. If you really want to be a champion, then work is no problem. If you really want to go to medical school, then the work is no problem. If you really want to bench press 225 pounds 48 times, then the work is no problem.
Mm,
So basically, maybe that's the takeaway from this session for you, for our
right.
listeners. What do you really want? And if you don't know what you really want is to find out what you really want.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
what?
Yep.
And I'm not saying really want here. what when you saw Dennis, when you were at that strongman's dinner, I think something stirred inside you. You didn't say to Lynn, I think this is a good idea. You say, I got to do this. You know, I got
Yeah.
and tell about the significant emotional experience you had with
Yeah.
the bricks, and you can
Yeah.
see Russell with the bricks over his left shoulder. So that was a significant emotion. So tell us, or have you already told that story?
No, I haven't told it on the podcast yet,
Yeah,
but that,
tell us that story.
well, I mean, that was, we were down in, visiting some friends down the Jersey Shore, and um, we saw at a youth rally on a Saturday. We saw these couple of strongman guys. They were kind of the intermission for a famous musician that was playing, and so uh, why I don't know, but Lynn left her purse at this church, and we leave there. We go up. We're going up the Garden State Parkway, and she decides, oh, I think I left my purse. We go back to the church, and the church is all locked up. It's late at night. We stayed at a friend's house that lived down there, and the next day we go to church, and fortunately it was an honest church, so her purse was there, and our friends sit on the second row, so the celebrities or the guests are in the front row. Anyway, this guy gets up and tells a story, and he said he didn't know if he was going to make the event because he had just lost his daughter a couple of weeks before to leukemia. She had been sick for a long time, and he's from California. And so, anyway, he uh, he tells his story, and he sits down right in front of me. And we had lost a child in a car crash back in '87, and so I just felt this empathy, but I didn't know what to say or do. I just felt it. And anyway, the service ends, and I just like reach out, like I was just going to give the guy some encouragement about grieving and loss. And so the guy turns around, he looks at me with these like crazy eyes, and he says, "Well, listen, I really don't have any time to talk or anything right now. We have a show down by Atlantic City." So I said, "No worries. I just want to encourage you and stuff and all." And he said, "Wait a minute." And all of a sudden, we're going to lunch, and we go to lunch, Lynn and me and this guy, and he says, "I need some help tonight." After we're telling our stories, he was like the guy out of what was that Patrick Swayze movie where he was the bouncer, Roadhouse, right? It was a crazy movie, but he was like that character in real life before he became a Christian. And so he says, "We need some help tonight. I'm really not feeling good." He says, "We need some help. We need somebody to help us break some bricks." So I said, "Yeah." And at that point, I'm a 39-year-old old basketball player, not a wrestler, old basketball player. Never did anything like that in my life before. And my wife is very supportive, and she goes, "Go ahead, honey, go help the guy." So we go down, we're going down the Garden State Parkway. This guy from San Diego, California is sitting next to me. He's teaching me, he's talking about breaking bricks, how to do it. And I'm going, "You're crazy." And he's yelling, "Watch the road." And we're yelling at each other back and forth. And we get down to Atlantic City, pull in this parking lot, and we go inside. And the guy that was with him had set up this two stacks of bricks on either side of the stage. And I said, "Well, do I get to practice?" He goes, "No, we don't have enough bricks." So I said, "Wait, there's 9 bricks. They're 2 inches thick. That's 18 inches of concrete." He goes, "Yeah, don't worry about it. Just do what I tell you to do and you'll be fine." And I'm like, ugh. So we go in the back to warm up. But for this guy, warm ups, that was just, he just got together and we prayed. And this guy prayed like it was way different than any prayer I'd ever prayed before. So anyway, we come out and we get up on stage. I mean, there was some initial event, and then it's supposed to be choreographed. I'm on one side of the stage, and another guy's on the other side of the stage, and we're going to break the stacks of bricks at exactly the same time. And all these people, it's like being at a big sporting event or something. Everybody's, cheering and yelling, and I'm all excited. And but the next thing they start the countdown, 10, and as soon as they do the countdown, it's like all that excitement goes out of me and I'm filled with fear, right? And it's that type of fear though where it's not just, oh, I'm afraid. This was like life and death fear. I was afraid it was going to break my arm. I was afraid it was going to be very painful. I was afraid they're going to be carrying me out to the local hospital, just embarrass everybody. And I remember to talk, and it was actually by a guy you've heard of years ago, Dexter Yeager. Dexter Yeager, an old truck driver, he said that faith and fear cannot live in the same body at the same time. And I remember going, what does that mean? It took me a week to figure it out. And it's like one or the other. It's going to be active in your body. You can't be both at the same time. And anyway, I went for total faith. I jumped up, hit that sack of bricks, and I still can't believe it. But that was a turning point for me. That was,
Yeah.
in a
So,
lot of
is
ways,
there ever been a time in
physically. I'm sorry, what?
is there ever been a time in your life that you weren't able to? The bricks always broke, right?
After that, yes. I think when you maybe once I stumbled or something like that, but basically, yeah, every time they broke.
So you're undefeated with the bricks.
Yeah, yeah. I wish we could still get them. They don't even make them anymore. They
And this
went
is
out of
no fooling
style
around.
with
Just
land.
just look at the picture over Russell's shoulder. I mean, that's the real thing.
But yeah. So
Mhm.
those type of experiences, we call it a breakthrough, obviously, and it's breaking through what's holding you back in life. But yeah, Doc, let me ask you, because I know we're running a little bit long here, and I don't want to hold you up, but the college kids today. I know you used to. I don't know if you still do. You did the freshman orientation course at Montclair State and everything. I've been going into schools down here in South Carolina now since we moved down here, and I'm just wondering, like, what are you seeing different about kids today in terms of like preparation once they get to college? What are they, you physically, intellectually, emotionally? Have kids changed, or are you still feeling like it's just another freshman orientation?
Well, I still think the kids, just like we was talking about, 3%, 27%, 60%, 10%. I mean, I have 3% of my students that are extraordinary, 27% they're really good, 60% that they really want to be average, and 10% they no matter what you do, they won't do it. Let me give you an example of a 10 percenter. Um, in the apartment house I live in, I try to mentor this 10th grader, and he doesn't read. He just doesn't read. So I give him a copy of my favorite book I ever read, The Boys in the Boat, about the 1936 Olympic. It's an incredible book. It just, in the last year, it just came out as a movie. So I said, I want you to read this book. Then I reached in my pocket and I take out $100 bill and said, finish this book within 2 weeks and I'll give you this. So I give him the book to keep. I motivate him with $100. And then I saw him the other day and I said, have you started yet? He said, no. And it's been 6 weeks. He's not going to read the book.
Oh,
He's just
goodness.
not going to. So the biggest thing I find that since COVID, and I don't know what's happened, the students are still 3%, 27%, 60%, 10%. But the current students, they just won't ask for help. They will
Hmm.
not ask for. And I spoke to other people and they say, I don't know what the asking for help is. I give out my cell phone number to all my students almost every class, and I say, if I can help you, call me. And the other day somebody actually did, but they will not call. Like with my laziness demonstration last semester, I gave it to them. They had to do it over the weekend. I said, you have any problems with any of the questions, call me. Some of my students would rather get an F than call me for help. I don't understand that. I mean, I was pretty
I don't know.
lazy, but I wasn't that lazy. So, but
Right,
that's the
right.
main thing. The main thing is college really has not changed that much. Of course, the technology has changed, but basically anybody. Well, let me just. There are two things I want people to know about college. First of all, there's no great college. Oh, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, the best schools. No, there's a best school for you. If you really 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 want to stay at home to be with your family, then Montclair State is a great place for you if you live in Secaucus. You
Right.
don't want to go to Harvard, you don't want to go to Cambridge, Massachusetts. So there's no best school, there's just a best school for you. And the second thing is what I mentioned before. College has nothing to do with intelligence, it has everything to do with diligence. And graduate school even has less to do with intelligence and even more to do with diligence. And getting a PhD or a medical degree or law degree even has less to do with intelligence and more with diligence. It's all diligence, all keep on keeping on. So, one of the things I'd like people to watch It's a very boring video. Put in Google, go to YouTube and put in world record, Guinness World Record of for blindfolded foul shooting. And there's a guy that sets the record for blindfolded foul shooting. I think he got 15 in a row blindfolded. 15. And I think the old record, if I remember correctly, was like 10 or 11 or 12. Now, the interesting thing is the guy's 73 years old. And I showed this to my students and I said, what was the most interesting thing about that video? And they never get it. Well, once in a while, the students say, how come the guy shagging the balls is handing it back to him? He doesn't throw him back. I said, he's blindfolded. He won't see it. But the most interesting thing is the guy that sets a record has a walker next to him. A walker, you
Oh
know,
my
and
gosh.
and he still set the record. And you cannot tell me that had anything to do with anything but diligence.
Sure.
And I don't know, for some reason, this guy said, I really want that, and he did it. So I will guarantee that anybody that takes the I really want that and hooks it up with unbelievable diligence will get whatever you want,
There you go.
whether it's sales or school or sports or anything.
All right. So I really appreciate you giving us this time today, Doc. But I'm going to ask you this one last thing, and I have no idea where it's going to
Okay.
go, but I want to hear your all-time
Okay.
inspirational story.
Well, every once in a while somebody asks me that. And to tell you the truth, it's usually the last story that I just either wrote or the last story I heard, you know? Um, so on Valentine's Day, I came across an old bits and pieces story of back in the 20s. Now, this is a love story. The big Hollywood star was named Helen Hayes. And
Mhm.
she's at a Christmas party one day, and a young person who would be famous one day, but he wasn't famous at that time. I think his name was James Arthur. I might be getting that wrong. So, of course, Helen Hayes is the belle of the ball, and he just wants to say hello to her. So he
Right.
finally gets her ear, and they're talking, um, and he's so nervous, and he has some peanuts in his hand, and he's very nervous. He said, "Helen, would you like some peanuts?" And she said, "Sure." And she's taking the peanuts, and he says, "I wish they were emeralds." And she said, "Oh, that's sweet." Well, guess what? They had a date. They got engaged, and they were married. And towards the end of their marriage, before one of them died, that they have a big anniversary dinner, and they went out to a nice restaurant. And right before dessert, he gives her a little box, and she opens it up, and it's a beautiful emerald necklace. And she takes it out and says how beautiful it is. And then, with a tear in her eye, she says, "I wish they were peanuts. I wish, I wish we were starting all over again. I wish we were young kids just starting this journey."
Uh,
So the other one I made up the other day, because my good friend down by you in North Carolina, Martin Rooney, is coaching the high school team. So he was telling about. So I made up this story. So suppose it's one day in North Carolina, and track practice, and there are about 80 kids out for the track team. And the coach could feel there's no energy on the track. The throwers aren't energized, the runners aren't energized. So the coach blows his whistle, and everybody encircles the coach. And he looks in the corner. He said, "Hey, Russell, are you there?" He said, "Yeah, coach, I'm here." Hey, he said, "Russell, who's your best friend?" "Oh, that's easy. My best friend is Dennis." He said, "Russell, not when you're at track practice. When you're at track practice, your best friend is pain. I don't want you to leave pain at home. I don't want you to leave pain in the locker room. I want you to be pain right next to you, and I want you to fight through that pain. You know, once you make pain your friend and you don't resist it and you persist through it, you're going to be a superstar." He said, "Russell, what's on the wall of my office? He said, I don't know, coach. Well, come in, Russell. You'll see it. It says, be comfortable being uncomfortable. Make friends with pain. So I made up that story the other day. I like that story.
That's a good one. It's going to scare some people, but it's a good
Well, I
story.
mean, okay, suppose you're talking to students. Hey, Russell,
What?
who's your best friend? Boredom. You
Boredom.
know, what most people feel the pain. Oh, it's time to quit. Most people feel the boredom. Oh, pack up the books. Most people rejections enough in sales. So let's give a Muhammad Ali story. Muhammad Ali was training once for an upcoming championship fight, and he used to love to have his fans around. So there are a lot of fans there, and he's in the ring doing sit-ups. 223, 224, 225, and he finally stops, gets out of the ring. All of his handlers are toweling him off, and one of the fans came up to him. He said, "Hey, champ, how many sit-ups did you do?" And Ali said, "Well, to tell you the truth, I'm not sure." He said, "What do you mean you're not sure? I heard you counting." Then Ali said, "Oh, I only start counting when they start hurting."
Ooh, nice.
Now that's a secret.
That's a
That's a
secret.
secret. You start counting reps and sets when it starts hurting. You start studying when it start getting bored, you know?
Yeah.
That's the thing. The game starts when it starts hurting. And that's why I'm ending this the way I should start. Get off of this and listen to Helene. She knows this stuff. See, the difference is I could talk about this. Helene lives it, you know?
She
How many
does.
days in a row did she run a marathon?
93.
That's
93 days. We talk about it. It's on the podcast. You'll hear it.
forget about David Goggins. Forget about David Goggins.
All right.
Malay
Well,
Devil is my new hero.
okay. Well, that's a wrap. Hope everyone enjoyed today's episode and you got some takeaways that you can use. I'm sure you have. And you can follow Dr. Gilbert here at his, this is success hotline is 973-743-4690. And you can just put success hotline in, I think, Doc, in the podcast, and it'll come up there too. It gets posted there as well. Every day you'll get a new one. Please share this with your friends, and don't forget all my stuff at
Could I
Russell
say one
Jones.
more thing?
Sure.
Okay, special bonus since you stayed with us for the whole time. One of my really, really fun things is when one of my success hotline callers or one of my colleagues called or Russell calls and said, "Hey, I'm giving a talk tomorrow night and I need a story." So if you're ever in the situation, if you're speaking at an awards banquet, but you have to call me within 1 or 2 days. Don't call me 3 weeks before because there's no juice. You got to be, and I will come up with a story. So you need a story. You need to know what to say right before that. I love doing this, and I'll give you. Well, I hope I'll give you exactly right story, but I've done it with enough people that I think we could figure out what to do for the talk. Or even if you have to give a best man speech at a wedding, I'm good at that too.
All right.
So
Good
let me give you
stuff.
my cell phone. My cell phone is 973-985-4138. 973-985-4138. And
Awesome.
the good news is that I just gave you my cell phone number. The bad news is you probably will be like my students and you probably won't call.
Oh
But I
no.
hope you do. 973-985-4138. That's it for me.
Doc, thank you. And don't forget all my stuff at russelljonespeaks.com. If you're a parent or grandparent or mentor to a 10 to 15-year-old, check out my 60-day transformational interactive video series, Top Secrets of Success for Kids and Parents. And in the words of the inimitable Hulk Hogan, say your prayers, take your vitamins, and you'll never go wrong. Then you can all go and make it a great day. Thanks again, Doc. Bye for now.